Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your questions answered, and contribute to the community dialogue. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our weekly Passive House Accelerator live webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast.
So welcome to the podcast coming from NESEA BuildingEnergy Boston. I am Ilka Cassidy with the Passive House Accelerator, and I am joined by Kristoff Irwin today.
Hello everybody, Kristoff Irwin, Building Science Podcast, Positive Energy.
So we decided to do something new, right?
Yes.
We decided to join forces and do this together.
And it's aligned with the conference theme.
Yeah, and we'll hear a little bit more about that from Jacob, because he's going to talk quite a bit about what the conference theme is this year. But basically, we are trying to not only connect as individuals, as friends, but also as
representatives of our organizations.
Exactly. So we're trying to join the bigger movement, and this is what it's all about.
We're going to keep you in suspense on what the theme is.
So what brought you here this year? Because this is your first time, right?
I know. Well, I figure I'll come every 50th year for NESEA. This is NESEA's 50th anniversary. Yeah, it's actually kind of a personal thing. It was some end of year, beginning of year evaluations of life and career, and the sense of knowing that my days and weeks, probably like most of you listening, just get kind of gobbled up by something. And there was this maybe moment of clarity, maybe megalomania of just put the big pieces in first. What do I really want to do? What are the things that I do that I look back on and I'm so glad I did? And it's always conferences. So I decided to heck with it. I'm doing it. I'm actually doing this one, and I have a Beck one in Iowa, and then I have another Passive House Northwest in April. And it is a little bit like, oh yikes, lots of plane trips, but it's always happy in the rearview mirror. Like, yeah, I'm so glad I did that. So important.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think especially with what's going on politically right now, this chaos and uncertainty, it feels like such a safe space to come here and reconnect with people. It's a little bit of a sanity check.
Yeah, you're right. There might be a little, well, not selfish per se, but a little bit of finding comfort in like-minded people and knowing that it's important to build these movements now and as best we can.
Yeah. I always really like coming to NESEA because I really like going to Passive House conferences, of course. I like all the technical background that you learn, and you can do that here at NESEA as well. They're very technical sessions, but I feel like there's also a very broad picture of sustainability in general or humanity, I guess. And we saw some sessions that we're going to talk about a little bit later that basically, they do have a lot to do with running a business, but they're not very technical. So I really like that about NESEA, that NESEA allows for those sessions, and it feels like there are more and more of those coming up. So before we get into the interviews, I want to thank the sponsors of the Passive House Accelerator, which is a big thank you to NYSERDA. And then founding sponsors are 475 High Performance Building Supply, Ingui Architecture, Partel, Rockwool, and Zola. And the champion sponsors are Beviso, Cascadia Windows and Doors, European Architectural Supply, Facro, Icon, Intelligent Membranes, LG, Source 2050, and a thank you to 475 High Performance Building Supply for being our sponsor of the week. Let's get into the interviews, and we had a chance to talk to Jacob, who is the chair of BuildingEnergy Boston this year.
Deva Racusin, Force of Nature.
Yeah, let's get into it.
So my name is Deva Racusin. I am the co-founder and director of Building and Science and Sustainability at New Frameworks. I am also lead researcher and BEAM developer with Builders for Climate Action. And this year, I am one of the co-chairs of the NESEA Building Energy Boston Conference.
Well, welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited to be speaking to you, and I'm really excited about the whole conference. It's sold out again.
Yes.
I heard.
Thrilled.
Which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to hear a little bit more about the conference theme and what your expectations are for everything over the next 2 days. But before we do that, I would like to hear a little bit more about how the conference kicked off last night.
Yes. So last night we were really thrilled to sort of co-promote an event that was sponsored by the CLF Carbon Leadership Forum Boston Hub that held a screening of the Women in Carbon film, followed by a panel of just some incredible women that are in leadership positions in climate work within the region. And it was really inspiring and really just it's a beautiful story. It's a really encouraging and inspiring to hear the really phenomenal work that's being done across multiple different sectors within the building industry, and to see the role that women have in playing that, and specifically, it was just really wonderful. It was also really incredible to bring that group of people together, and for me, I felt highly motivated in trying to have a stronger connection between the NESEA community and the Carbon Leadership Forum community. That was a really important sort of objective of mine. And so to have that event time out such that it could coordinate as a sort of an opening event for the conference was just thrilling.
Yeah, I mean, I actually saw a screening at Greenbuild last year.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just amazing. How do people get to see it?
Oh, good question. Well, I think the website, they have a website for the film that is, at least, I know they have a trailer there. And I believe they list there where the film is being screened. And it tends to be hosted in different regions around different events. And so that would probably be the place to go to find out where the next screening would be.
Yeah, and if you have a big event coming up, maybe you can reach out.
Absolutely, yes. This is tailor-made for to associate with a conference or event or something along climate theme.
So highly recommend.
Highly recommend it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really powerful movie.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into the conference.
Yes.
What is the theme?
So the theme this year is building the movement. Yep. I'm really excited about the theme for a number of reasons. To progress the work that we're doing around climate action and decarbonization really requires us to move outside of our individual silos, whether it's as a practitioner or within a company or even within like a small portion of the building sector. There's a lot of work that we can do within our little sort of spheres of influence, but there's a low ceiling to that. And the level of systems level change that we need to make to be able to fully decarbonize our industry really requires us coordinating with each other in broader spheres of our effort. And so building the movement is really organized around sort of breaking out of those silos and coordinating together more collectively as an industry. It's also about recognizing that the challenges that we're facing right now are enormous, and some would say are even larger, or at least less clear now that we're in this highly disruptive moment in American politics and within our economy. And so it is really important that we identify not just as sort of slogging it out by ourselves, but figure out how to find each other and find the support and solidarity and the opportunities that come from coordinating with each other. And that's what movement building work is. And it's about identifying the work that we do within a larger whole and working together within that context to achieve more than what we could do by ourselves. And NESEA is the perfect organization to sort of catalyze that type of networking, that type of collective impact and collective work. It's what NESEA's been doing for a very long time. And so to really make that front and center of the intention of the conference felt really important right now.
Awesome. So what are your expectations? What are you hoping to see? And I think for me, I definitely want to dig into how everyone sees this building the movement and how they and their presentation relates to it.
Yeah.
And then also just walking out of here being hopeful and knowing things that I can do, call for actions.
Yep.
Is there something that you would you would say is important to you?
Yeah, no, thanks for that. I mean, I think you articulated really well what my primary goal is that people leave this conference really identifying that, one, they're not alone in their work, and two, that there's so much more opportunity and power in figuring out how their work can coordinate with the work of others. And so that would be like the number one, that people leave with a feeling of connection and motivation towards action. I think I have other goals around having brought many really powerful organizations together into this conference, many of whom are speakers, some of whom are tabling or down in the trade floor. It is a phenomenal collection of organizations and companies that have collected here around this conference. And so on an organizational level, for these groups to find each other, these companies to find each other, is the next level out, and then sort of the next orbit out from individuals finding each other and each other's people. And so again, I mentioned how thrilled I was to see this connection between Carbon Leadership Forum and NESEA. That's one of hundreds of different connections that I'm anticipating will be formed from the various organizations finding each other in this space.
Awesome. What's your call for action?
My call for action is to, that's a great one. My call for action is to show up. Woody Allen, I think I'm going to attribute this to Woody Allen. I'm not sure if he's the first one to say it, or if that's just who he's known for. That 80% of life is showing up. And I think we find that on our daily, that it's actually some of the hardest things is to just show up. And I think that's all the more true right now. I'm less interested in what the action is than the action is taken, and that people are willing to commit themselves and to redouble their efforts to literally wake up and show up again in the morning. And I really viscerally understand how challenging that can be, but that is also the most important thing that we can do. What we do will change, will adapt, will modify over time. It'll never be perfect. But right now, the call to action is literally to show up, to take the action, and we will collectively find our way through this emergent path of what action to take when. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, so that was a really interesting interview. And my comment on it is really just Jacob as a person, what a force he is in the industry, and how he always seems to find the right words, and he makes it seem effortless. And he's very nerdy, little picture stuff like the beam tool, but he's also vast. It's exciting to know there are people like that out there.
Yeah.
And we're colleagues, you and I.
I just feel like he has the gift of drawing people in. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
This conference being a magnet for people joining, starting, continuing a movement.
Yeah.
I really like this topic. It's just so open, but also so specific in other ways, because you can walk away with things to do, call to action.
Yeah.
So, and I really like his call to action of just show up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really, really good advice, because so many times, it's just like going to the gym in the morning or something. The biggest thing is just like getting out of bed and then you just go for it. And it's always good. It's always better than, even a really bad workout is better than doing nothing.
Absolutely.
So just show up.
That's really good. Yeah, it's the larger theme of that is that it's not enough to know how to deliver fantastic buildings, and what is required to cause that to actually happen in the world. And I think that's why a lot of people are kind of gravitating in these conferences to sessions that are non-technical. I think the technical draws you in. It's sort of exciting ideas, and it's well known, but that it really is a movement when people start to realize that it's not enough to know how do you make it happen, and then you realize, it's not just a technical problem. It's not a math problem on how to talk to a client or how to talk to, project teams. Yeah.
Yeah, and we actually got a chance to talk to Andrew Himes as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So he did the keynote.
Yeah.
Let's take a listen to him.
My name is Andrew Himes, and I'm the Director of Collective Impact for the Carbon Leadership Forum. And our mission is to radically reduce the embodied carbon in materials and building projects around the world. And we do that by developing model policies that help governments at all levels and track those policies. We do that by developing the data and the tools that are required in order to make those changes by designers like engineers and architects. And we do that by uniting with and learning from and colluding with a vast number of partners.
I'm curious how you would describe the movement?
So I guess my definition of a movement is a bunch of people who share a common vision of the world that they want to live in, which is a stretch beyond the world that we live in today, then coming together to engage in collective action in order to have measurable impact in order to reach that world. And the requirements are, it really does begin with a common vision. What is the world that you want to live in? What are the rules that you want to live by? And at the very heart of any movement is a whole lot of relationships, a lot of friendships and alliances and collaborations and folks who kind of have this basic idea that all by myself I can have relatively little impact, but if I'm part of a much larger body of human beings who share a vision and share an idea and share a set of assumptions about how we should talk to each other, how we should learn from each other. What is it that I have to give to you and you have to give to me? What is it that we can accomplish together, collectively, that we couldn't possibly accomplish by ourselves, right? So that's what a movement is. And the question for, I think, in the building industry, it's, what are all the things that have to happen in order for us to move the needle in profound and systematic ways in addressing the carbon challenge?
Yeah.
Right? So that began, from my point of view, it began, 30, 35 years ago with the founding of the U.S. Green Building Council and the original idea for something called the LEED standard. And then over most of the last 35 years, it's been mainly all about operational energy and reducing energy consumption in the built environment. And over the last 5, 10, and a little bit more years, I would say, we've developed collectively a much more holistic and comprehensive understanding of what is the world that we want to live in. And now we think about building materials, we think about construction, we think about operating costs, we think about MEP systems, we think about a world of things. We think about healthy building materials. We think about buildings in situ. We think about landscaping. We think about the entire community, the impact on the entire community. So what we're doing no longer is simply about creating energy efficient buildings. We're also thinking about how do we create healthy, happy, thriving communities that are not simply sustainable, but are more than sustainable, move toward a vision of the world that welcomes every human being and says everybody's got a right to live in a wonderful place and be part of a supportive community, and to know that everybody that they love and care for has that same opportunity. And so, in some ways, at least for me, I think, when I think about a movement, I think about an expanding set of concentric circles that include more and more and more people who share that vision with us and are willing to jump in and help do the work together with us, right? Mm-hmm. The challenge is we want healthy, thriving, green buildings with a very low carbon footprint, or even potentially that store carbon on balance. And at the same time, we want buildings that cost less and that are more efficiently constructed. And when you think about it, a building with lower embodied carbon is also one potentially that has less of an impact on infrastructure, less of an impact, materials have to travel shorter distances, or they're assembled in one piece in modular production facilities. There are all kinds of ways that we can think of to combine affordability with sustainability. And the other thing I'd say is that even with, we face a lot of challenges right this minute in the political world, climate, and in the world at large. That's true. And at the same time, before these current extreme crises that we think we're facing now, before that, we were not on a gradual curve towards sustainability at all, right? That brings up like what I've been thinking about. How does change take place, right? Change takes place over long periods of time at a pace that feels very slow, glacial. And if you just draw a straight line through the points of change, through the data, what you'll say is there's no way in hell that we're going to meet any of these targets that we're so passionate about. 2030, 2040, or 2050, or 2080 even. There's no way that we're going to make any of those targets. And here's the way that true change, truly happens in the world, in the natural world and in the human world, in the social and the cultural world. There are days that go by when 30 years of change gets compressed into 6 hours.
Yeah.
And there are also days that go by when 6 hours of change takes 1 million years to recognize or to see the results of. So all we really know is that the system as it exists today is unsustainable, unproductive, unhealthy.
Yeah.
So here's what we need. We need a disruption in the system that creates new opportunities and new dynamics, right? And we don't know what that disruption looks like. We don't know whether it's going to be good or bad. All we know is that the system is unsustainable as it exists, as it is currently evolving. And we know that we have to make radical changes on a large scale.
Yeah.
So when disruption takes place, we're left with a challenge, each and every one of us, and collectively we are. What is it that we are going to do that's radically different than what we have done in the past?
What is your call for action?
Yeah, one of the reasons that I love about NESEA and that I love about the world that you and I live in, this industry and these people, these humans, is that there is a lot of nerds here who are deeply grounded in reality.
Yeah.
And who do not need to be optimistic or pessimistic about the future, who are really focused on the material world. What we need in spades is to deeply embrace the world as it is, and then make breakthroughs, right? So that means breakthroughs in new materials, it means breakthroughs in calculating the carbon footprint of those materials. It means including all of the factors that lead to an embodied calculation for any project, material, a project, or a building or an infrastructure project. It means that we need to report on that data. It means that we need to act on that data. We need to work to develop policies that drive change, transformation, and we need to lean on each other and trust that the collective wisdom of the crowd is far more deep and insightful than me all by myself sitting in a corner.
Yeah. Following up with that, Andrew, it seems clear that many sections of society right now feel like change is due. Yeah. You know, even if they're kind of disagreeing on which direction change should be, but it's like the status quo is no longer the path we want to pursue. And what that means is the fundamental paradigms that the way we see the world, fundamental paradigms of the way we see the world are changing. And that is a really powerful time. It's also a destabilized time. So, I think there's cause for optimism right now, despite the seriousness of the times.
Well, in a way, I mean, you already started a movement, right?
Yeah.
You did it.
I wouldn't agree with that. I don't think I started a movement. No? I think the CLF and I individually are all part of a zeitgeist and are responding to a call that the earth itself presents to us. Yeah. Right? You know, quite frankly, I don't think I can convince any of my Republican cousins and my brother and my sisters and my aunts and uncles. I don't think I convince them through data and logic that we need to do X or Y. It's a combination of, yes, the relationship that we have with each other, but also the relationship that we have with the planet. And the compelling arguments are made by the planet, by the global ecosystem in which we live. And the planet is screaming bloody murder right this minute.
Yeah, and every decision we make in the AEC is somehow grounded in a story we tell ourselves about humanity's relationship to nature. Yeah,
That's right.
so that story is changing. So okay, so Andrew, wow. I don't think he said it in his bio there, but he comes from a long line of fundamentalist Baptist ministers, and the minister part, he's got that. Like, that came in through the DNA. He got a standing ovation, and he got all teared up, and I got choked up, and that's priceless.
Yeah, and that's why we're here, right? I think what was amazing about, everything he talks about is amazing, and what he just told us, but also in his keynote, he had us talk to our neighbors and just talk about the movement that we have joined and what we are doing. And then he asked people to share that with everyone. And that was amazing.
Yeah.
Every single person had something to say, and something very special and exciting and inspiring to everyone else. So I think that was such a great move that he did that. And it just shows, even if you just talked about,
Ours was MEP. I happened to sit next to another MEP engineer. Like, what are the odds of that?
Yeah. So, but it's joining the forces and I guess building the movement.
Yeah, this is kind of silly, but I've often had this idea that, so what we're getting at is that, it's just, excuse me, is that seat taken? You sit down, and you don't realize the richness and the depth of caring and understanding that's sitting next to you, right? And I have this vision of a conference where there's like 2 rows of chairs facing each other, and there's enough for everyone in the whole conference. And then you talk for 5 minutes, and then one group of people stay still, and everyone else moves 1 chair to the right. And then the person at the end comes. And so you end up having a 5-minute check-in with everyone.
We've actually done that on I think one of the Green Building United sessions years and years ago. There was a whole session set up as speed dating.
Yeah.
It was a little different, but it was speed dating.
Yes.
And maybe we should do that more.
And that would be a great conference.
Yeah.
And the benefit also so the keynote was interactive, because you're asked to talk to your neighbor for a few minutes, like quite a few minutes, and then the microphone's going around the room, so you're hearing all that. And so you're there, like the thing that's deep inside you is really alive and present in the room. It's not like at a movie just watching something, content being sent to you. Yeah.
Well, and I feel like, we went to a couple other sessions where they did something similar. I think 2 or 3 sessions yesterday where it was the same thing. You turn around and talk to your neighbor about different problems. But I've gotten to know so many people. And what's also interesting, if you're prompted in a certain way, you tell the person next to you that you've never ever talked to or met before very personal things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I know that when they announced it was in Kai Fast's session. I remember they're saying, okay, we're having an exercise coming up. The first thing I do is kind of go, oh no.
Yes, I do too. Definitely.
And then once it happens, like 2 of those sessions, I end up getting their names and emails, and we emailed last night, checking in and connecting, and it's so fantastic.
Yeah. So what are the other highlights?
Well, I'll stay with that one. That was that session, it was called the Curb Cut Effect, Practical Tools for Engaging Neurodiverse Project Teams. And it was Kai Fass and Mel Hauser and Miriam Aylward. And it was tremendous. It was basically about recognizing that your employees or your team or the people you work with, that the nature of that dynamic is so important. Here you have someone's mind and life force, and how do you get good results out of it? And this idea that everyone needs the same lighting level or the sound level or receives and sends out information in the same way is sort of out there in our world, but it's not true. And it's a fundamental misperception of people.
Yeah, absolutely. And the statistics are that 1 out of 5 people learn differently and just have a neurodivergent brain. And just recognizing that can really change your whole perspective of a person and how you work with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We have different hair color and eye color and body shape. Why on earth would we assume our minds are wired the same, right? And I really appreciated the idea that one of the things that we sort of assume in our society is that people are good transmitting data back and forth quickly, verbally, right? Like me peppering you with questions, or you asking, going back and forth, question and answer, and thinking on your feet and coming up with an answer. That everyone's good at that. That's just the normal way. And it is sort of the normal way, but not everyone's good at that. And that's not how, so it's really recalibrated me.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. So I really liked a session that was kind of a follow-up on the keynote.
Yeah.
It was about looking at different models of collective impact. That was the session title. And it was a panel of
There's 8 people.
8 people that represented a different organization that already has been building a movement. And my call to action is I'm going to read the ones that were represented, and for the listeners to just go and look them up and get familiar with them. So there was Carbon Leadership Forum Regional Hubs. There was ECHO, and I actually forget what that stands for. It was a very smart acronym.
It was Embodied Carbon Harmonization and Optimization, I think.
Okay. Then Green Commons Peer Networks, Climate Heritage Network, MEP 2040, NESEA Bottom Line, the Bio-Based Material Collective, Builders for Climate Action, and the structure.
SE 2050. Yeah.
SE 2050, exactly.
Yeah, that guy was funny. I liked him.
Yeah, so
Mike.
Please go and look them up.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, so let's see what else is going on.
Yeah, here comes Friday. We're here now with Laura Bailey and Heather Ferrell, and we've just listened to your morning keynote on Friday, and it was just tremendous, so thank you. And we're going to try to do some justice to it in a short form here, so good luck.
My name's Heather Ferrell, and I'm an architect in North Carolina, and I also am the executive director of Prism Design Lab. We're an arts organization, an arts education organization that introduces young people to architecture and design, in particular young people who are currently underrepresented in the design profession, so young women and young people of color. And we're hyper-local. We offer programming in the Durham-Chapel Hill area of North Carolina.
Great. And I'm Laura Cavan-Bailey, and I work at the Vermont Council on Rural Development as the Climate Economy Program Manager. And in that role, support communities creating a process, democratic process, to prioritize what they want for the future and connect to resources and really build the vibrancy that they want to see in the world. And we're actively nonpartisan and work statewide in Vermont to support communities there.
Your talk was exactly aligned with the theme, building the movement, and it was also consistent with, I think we're like, as our industry matures, we're getting past looking at building materials being arranged to have outcomes, and we're looking at groups of people and organizations being arranged to have outcomes. And you guys stopped my mind with a graphic or this description of a neural net or galaxial clusters.
Mm-hmm.
How did you come up with that idea? Or tell me about that.
You start.
Brian Bell is a mentor of mine. He's the leader in the Public Interest Design Network. And he has talked about these star nebulas as being a way to show how things are connected in so many ways. So I started thinking about that. We started thinking about what kind of graphics could represent this. And I thought of a neural network and just started experimenting with generating images, and found one that really showed how at a close look, you might have a few connections. The further out that you zoom, you see so many more potential connections. And we think that really speaks to this work. By reaching out, it's just how you make it stronger. And then you also see that what I think resonates with me a lot is that you see that on different levels. So in the ecosystem, in the galaxy.
Yeah, within a community, just sort of all of those little connections that you wouldn't think of normally being important to the process are actually really critical to the overall structure of a community.
Yeah, we have this sort of artificial constraint of linear thinking, and it's actually not how things work in reality. It's sort of like there's 4 of us around this table. This is like a synaptic connection in a societal mind right now, right? And then we're all gonna take this spark and mix it with all the, I don't know how many people are here.
Well, and I really liked how you connected that to your community work, to projects involving the whole community, because it's so easy as the architect or developer or project manager to kind of dismiss people that are not in the field and go the easy route. And just, you talked about that everyone knows exactly how this is going to, go, and taking the time and stepping back and actually really going to the people that are going to live within that community and asking them for what they think is just really awesome. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, and I think that's what makes people really nervous, is coming into a project or a process that you don't know what the outcome is. And come in with the beginner's mind was another way we were thinking of how to share that. It feels very vulnerable if you're not comfortable in that space. And I would say most people aren't comfortable not knowing what the outcome or the goal is going to be, and creating a space for that emergence of really creative place-based ideas that come from outside of our silos or the professions that we are. And it's really come to light with how people speak and how people feel like they're part of a process, and just really breaking down those barriers to really engaging and working at different levels that we're not used to. We see ourselves as professions and professionals, and we work with other professionals, and then we create these great projects and products. But there's so much more beyond that can enhance that process and that product coming out.
Well, it's also something that we don't necessarily learn when we go to school, right, as an architect. So I think it's, as you said, you have to be brave to take that on a little bit. Yeah. What I really appreciated is how you set this safe space and make sure that everyone knows, especially in one of the first meetings, that there's not going to be a decision being made. Yeah. So I feel like that's a great idea, because I think when there's something at stake, people get very defensive very quickly. And even within communities that want the same thing, they might have different opinions what the right thing is to do. So I think that's a really good way to start that conversation.
Well, and really a foundation of it is people want to be heard. They want to be able to share their ideas. And if they're feeling pushed out of a process, that's often when they get the most loud about it and the most disruptive of how they want it to go forward. And so I think by creating all those spaces to hear the voice, that's all that may be needed to help that opposition feel like they were part of it. And yes, it can still go forward. My voice was heard, and maybe there were some modifications to it, but it's not stopping the train in its tracks.
Yeah. I also think we didn't really talk about a project's success. We talked about this first stage, but when you involve people from the beginning, they are invested. They are part of it. And so then once the project's finished, they had a part of that. And so they have that ownership. And when they're excluded and they don't have ownership of the project, maybe the project doesn't even get utilized in the to its full capacity.
Yeah, just to expand on Laura, something you said and you alluded to it, Ilka, but there was this workforce housing project, and you said, hey, how about we take a blank sheet of paper and go out to the community? And it was shot down. The idea was like, no, we know how to do this. And you were the only female in the room and the only person under 40. And I just want to call attention to people listening that are in this narrow slice of society, right? Cisgendered white men generally, that we have this power that it's invisible to us, but it's real. And I just felt, oh gosh, sorry that happened to you.
Yeah, well,
and then,
it's something that happens all the time.
Yeah.
And so bringing light to that and letting people know that that's happened, but also giving voice to those other folks at the table and the other women and people of color who are a part of this broader network that we're creating, and giving power, shifting power.
It's well overdue.
And I think too, I've been in the architecture world and been at the table as the only young woman. And even that Laura voiced her opinion, I think says a lot, because I've been in many situations where I just stayed quiet.
Yeah.
Because of the way that these dynamics have been, it's historical, and it's, it takes everybody to change them.
So maybe we can shift over to what you're doing, which has a lot to do with education. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, we work with all different ages of young people, and our programming really varies depending on the age. And so with elementary, middle schoolers, we focus on early exposure and really just having fun and thinking about their vision. When I went to architecture school, and I was not exposed to architecture as a profession as a kid, but when I went, we started by learning the tools, learning diagramming, learning how to draw and plan and section. And that had no context to me. And so instead, to be able to flip it and say, what can you imagine?
Yeah.
And let's make it visible. And then there are actual tools that you can use, and there's a process you can learn to have this kind of impact. So that's been kind of a trial and error. What works? What do kids kind of engage most with? It's usually something with their hands, and then making it fun. That's a huge part of what we do, is having fun together. And then with the high school students, we can get more intensive and talk about bigger issues. And, depending on the time, we do all sorts of different kinds of programs. But, and it's not, it's not a formal architecture education in any way, but it's just kind of trying to spark something.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so impressive. The question you ask, imagine the beauty you want to see in the world, and then you platform these students and these kids to make it real. It's incredible. It's like a rite of passage that is just totally missing in our societal, cultural kind of norms.
So Prism is kind of a metaphor, like we're just the vehicle for the light. And we say that, light, which can be unnoticed, passes through the prism and becomes bright colors that can't be ignored. And so we really take it seriously that it's their voice and their vision that this is about. It's not about the teachers or, it's just giving them the opportunity to share their ideas.
Well, and also your focus is exposing kids that might not be exposed to architecture in another way. Can you talk a little bit about the kids that you're teaching and the teachers that?
Sure. So we work, we want to reach those who are underrepresented in the design field. So young women, young people of color. We do a lot of work within the public school system because that's the best way to access children, young people. And so in that sense, we're not excluding any cisgendered young men either. And I think that's important too. All of our programming outside of the schools, we work with partner organizations who are working to uplift these young people from marginalized communities. So we work with different teachers depending on the school. It's like making connections within the school system. We've worked with media specialists because they have a lot of freedom in their programming. They can bring us into their libraries and they just have a lot of flexibility. We've worked with math teachers, we've worked with art teachers, we've worked with CTE coordinator, which is the Career Technology and Engineering program, and they get us into their classes. And we go in for a lot of our workshops are for like 45 minutes to an hour, and I leave after a full day of that. I'm completely exhausted, and I have the most respect for teachers as professionals.
Yeah.
I think they do the best work, and I've learned a lot from them, just how to interact with young people, the tricks. If you hear me clap once, there's lots of things that we can learn from teachers, and I feel really fortunate to be able to be in that space with them. Yeah,
it's amazing, and it's just so important to start early, because whatever seed you're planting in their heads. Now I'm kind of thinking about the image that you showed, how the kids were took ownership over a city block in a model, and they really put everything into their city block, but it still had to work as a whole. Right. So things like that, they will never forget.
And I captured a picture because when they started planning it, there were maybe 9 girls around there. And I was like, this is the planning future. It was really great to see that. It's, you give them a little idea and they'll just like take it as far as they can. Yeah, we learned so much from the young people we work with.
Well, we were also reflecting on after some of your workshops, but then also after some of the community engagement, it's like so energizing, and the ability to kind of walk away with that level of energy. And it's totally different than electric energy, but it's similar in that it's coming from people and it can be recharged and shared and shifted and brought together. And that's the energy level that I'm really fascinated with, of how do you tap into those exciting moments and those interests and build on them. And that's really how movements get built.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
you're magnetizing people to that energy. People want it natively. It's tremendous.
Well, I would like to ask you for your call to action.
Be humans together and really trust in that humanity and build it through strengthening relationships and connecting with people that you don't know, and connecting with organizations too that can go beyond your perceived network.
And I think one thing that we didn't include in our call to actions, but that we've talked about a lot with each other, is we get really, as professionals, we get really into becoming experts at what we do. And so both of us made these pivots in our careers and had to learn an entire new skill set. And so being comfortable with being a beginner and having that beginner's mind approach, I hope that I take it with me through the rest of my life. And I think it's important as adults to be comfortable doing that.
We're at the end of day 2 of the conference, and it's been amazing. Very, I guess, emotional, actually. And we just walked out of a session that was actually very emotional. So who wants to talk about that?
Well, one of the exercises was to stand up and take your child's hand in your left hand, and then your grandchild would hold your child's hand. And I guess there's one more. Your great-grandchild would hold that hand. So there's 3 generations, and the hopes and the longings and the innocence. And then in your right hand to hold your parents and your grandparents and your great-grandparents. And it doesn't seem as rich to say it in words, but it was so evocative. So you're closing your eyes, you're doing this, and then you're in the midst of this 7th generation experience, and just recognizing where we came from and where we're going, the challenges we face. Yeah, it was very rich. I mean, almost a little too much, honestly. Jacob?
Yeah, it was to experience that level of emotional intent and doing that in a professional setting. The combination of that, the context and the depth, was almost overwhelming.
Yeah.
I was fortunate to be partnered with someone who was sort of generously holding the space, which made it safe enough to really sink into it. But it was, the practice itself was incredibly deep, and doing it in the context of a professional conference was a whole other level of depth.
Yeah, I mean, I think just feeling, I mean, you talked about being in the middle of the 7 generations, and I mean, I could really feel that energy flowing through. That was surprising, I think. But I also think that, I mean, it all goes back, this whole session was about inner development goals, right? So how do you connect yourself? How do you, and we've seen the session before last year, right, Jacob? And I feel like they talked a little bit more about the knowing-doing gap. So you know what the right thing is to do, but how do you actually get to do it? So, just recognizing that, and I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to think about how do you actually bring that into projects and project teams. But I guess that's work that's really important, and we all need to do.
I 2 comments. One is that, I think it's work we all need to do, and we need to bring it into project teams because it's real, like being genuine and being present with other people. And what's the alternative? It's like to enter a project team meeting as a character in a role-playing game, right? And yet I can look you in the eyes and say, I have done that, right, for many years. And it's almost like the second phase of your professional career is to say, oh, the heck with that. I am going to show up. Yeah. And so I wanted the second thing was thank you, Jacob, or thank you for whoever had the courage to say yes to a session like that.
Yeah. You are welcome. Yeah. It felt, there was the vulnerability of being present in that session felt so critical for the level of transformational work that we need to do as individuals, which was the intention that they were setting, that if we're actually trying to create the level of transformational change that we are talking about in technology and economy, to identify that is deeply rooted, fundamentally rooted in our own individual transformation, and particularly those of us that are in leadership positions within our movements, within our organizations, or self-identified leadership that shows up however we show up. I feel really strongly that we cannot achieve the breadth and depth of transformation that we're striving for, and like the sort of the technocratic parts of our work, without doing this inner transformational work. And it just is this was a particularly potent example of this larger level of risk that I felt in bringing some really new and different elements to this conference, like overtly welcoming and joy and celebration into a sort of professional technical conference, and particularly at a time when so many people are feeling so much threat and grief and struggle, and bringing things like art and music and games into the context of like this very like intellectually driven like exchange of information and like professional networking, and it felt really risky to do that, but really critical to scale jump beyond the structures and systems in which we've been trying to create this change and this transformation, and that we just can't succeed within the really static boundaries of our sort of professional veneers and our professional relationships, that we have to be more human in those spaces to fully make this transition that we're really striving for. And this session was just one of the riskier sessions that we were pushing for and trying to bring into it, and felt like this culmination of this larger experience of how do we conference differently, how do we come together differently, how do we try to move this work forward in a way that isn't just about heat pumps and electrification and building energy performance, but also around who we are as individuals and how we coordinate together and how we create change on a transformational level externally, and to cultivate that internally was just a very high culmination of that intention.
And it was perfect that it came at the end, I feel like, because our brains are already kind of shut down a little bit.
Saturated.
Yeah, saturated. And just having this experience just appealed to a different part of your brain and heart.
Yeah, and heart and spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I was just going to give a sponsor, not really, but just to say what it is we're talking about was a session by Melissa O'Mara and Kevin Stack, and it was called Moving Beyond, Leveraging Moral Imagination to Accelerate Systems Change. And it's that last bit, right? We need to accelerate systems change, and none of us can deny it. And I love what you just said, Jacob, about, we've all been to dozens of conferences where it's transmit, receive, sit in audience as though it's some sort of movie and collect these ideas like they're baubles. And this is so much more important. And so, any conference organizers listening, please rethink, go deep.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jacob, for talking to us and for setting up the stage for a very safe space, I would say. I don't think I've ever been that engaged with people that I never talked to in a very, we always talk to a lot of people, but it always feels more like networking. Mm-hmm. I feel like this time, although of course it is networking because you're meeting people, but it just felt different. It felt a lot more open, a lot more relaxed, not as focused on, who do I need to meet so I can get the next project, right? So this felt differently, and I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
I'm so grateful to hear that reflection. Again, it just involves so much faith in this community and the people who showed up to cultivate and tend that space. I feel grateful to have been in a position to sort of set the table and invite people into the meal, but it was a collective experience that we co-created to have that. That was the risk. Like, there was a version of this in which people weren't able to show up fully, or where we sort of responded by kind of falling into old patterns or sort of restricting back into the, safer and more familiar ways of showing up and acting in professional community. And I just have such a deep gratitude for my friends and peers and community to be willing to show up in those vulnerable spaces and co-create such an incredibly rich experience.